Nah, I done grew up around some people living their life in bottles. Claim that he had the golden flask, back no bigger day in Chicago. Some people like the way it feels, some people want to kill their sorrows.
Hey guys, this is Karsh with Pro Gaming, finally back again with another Diablo 3 Barbarian build guide. Today we're going to be going over the HoTA barb. For the HoTA barb, we're going to need all 6 pieces of the Immortal King set, that being the head, chest, belt, pants, feet, and gloves. And firstly, let me say that I'm very, very sorry for not having posted in the last couple weeks. I've had a couple family things going on with my son being sick, and then also I've had terrible, absolutely awful internet. I haven't even been able to play. But let's get right back into the build guide. So let's go first over all the stat priorities you're going to want on every piece of gear. For your helmet, you're generally going to want strength, critical hit chance, and Hammer of the Ancients damage. In my particular build, I'm going almost full glass cannon. You could put Vitality here in place of Hammer of the Ancients damage if you feel necessary, but generally, if you want to do maximum damage, this is the way you're going to want it to look. For your chest, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, and either Life Percent or All Resist. I'm going with Life Percent just because my health pool is pretty bad, to be fair with you. Next, we're going to be looking at our belt. For your belt, you're going to want Strength, Vitality, All Resist, and Life Per Fury spent, because Hammer of the Ancients is a spender, and we don't really have a whole lot of healing outside of just spamming HoTA all the time. So you're going to want Life Per Fury spent somewhere on here. You could replace All Resist with Life Percent or Vitality with All Percent, depending on what your life pool looks like and what would benefit you more, the percentage or the points itself. And then for our pants, we're going to want Strength, Vitality, Armor, and then obviously get secondary resistances wherever you can. Pickup radius is good too, because unlike the Charge Barb or the Whirlwind Barb, you can't really just rush through enemies. You can get stuck fairly easily, so if you want to get pickup radius, and if you feel like you have enough all resist to suffice, then go ahead and get pickup radius in certain places if you feel like you need to. For our boots, we're going to want Strength, Vitality, all resist, and Hammer of the Ancients damage. You can get HoTA damage on your boots and on your helmet, so 30% increased damage is always going to be a good thing. For our gloves, we're going to want Strength, critical hit damage, critical hit chance, and area damage. This build is 100% self-sufficient. Your Hammer of the Ancients, because of your 4-piece of the Immortal King set, is going to reduce your very important cooldowns, your Wrath of the Berserker and your Call of the Ancients, so that you don't need to run cooldown. As long as you have cooldown in your Paragon, you should have plenty. Alright, and then to beef up Hammer of the Ancients a little bit more, we're going to be running with the Bracers of the First Men. You're going to want that to roll with Fire Skill damage, Strength, Vitality, and Critical Hit Chance, so exactly the way that you're seeing it right here. For your rings, you're going to be running with a Band of Might. You can either have a Band of Might or a Convention of Elements in here, whichever one you have rolled better. I don't have a really good Ancient Convention nor a Primal Convention, so I'm running with a Band of Might here. You're going to want that generally to roll with Critical Hit damage, Critical Hit Chance, and Area damage. I don't have one with area damage, so I'm running it with how I have it. And then for your other ring, you're going to want to run with the Compass Rose. We're going to be using Endless Walk set. The 2-piece saying, while moving, damage taken is reduced by up to 50%, and then while standing still, damage dealt is increased by up to 100%. We're benefiting more from the second part of it because Hammer of the Ancients is a standstill smash that's going to give you your damage, but when you're charging around or moving around looking for enemies, you are also benefiting from the first part of that, which brings us to our amulet. We're going to be running with the Traveler's Pledge. You're going to want that to roll with Fire Skill damage, Critical Hit damage, and Critical Hit Chance. Mine is awful. I have not found anything to replace this with. And then for our weapons, we're going to be running with the Little Rogue and the Slanderer. The Little Rogue and the Slanderer set piece saying, every time you spend primary resource, gain 6% increased attack speed, damage, and armor for 5 seconds. This effect stacks up to 5 times. So at 5 stacks, you're going to be getting 30% of all of these, which is going to be a lot more toughness, a lot more damage, of course. Lastly, we are going to be running with the Fury of the Ancients. You're going to want that to roll with Strength, Vitality, Life Percent, and Area damage. You could roll off Life Percent for All Resist in the case that you have enough life, you don't feel like you need any more, or you feel like you're maybe dying too much when you're around enemies with certain affixes. So that's kind of passable. You could roll Life Percent, you could roll All Resist. It doesn't really matter. Alright, now let's look at our legendary gems. Firstly, we're going to be running Bane of the Trapped, which says increase damage against enemies under the effect of control impairing effects by X, depending on the level. And then at level 25, it says gain an aura that reduces the movement speed of enemies within 15 yards by 30%, so it gives you the effect for free to give you that increased damage. Next, we're going to be running Pain Enhancer, which says critical hits cause the enemy to bleed for a certain percent weapon damage, depending on the level, as physical, over 3 seconds. And then at level 25 it says gain Blood Frenzy, which increases your attack speed by 3% for each enemy bleeding within 20 yards. And then lastly we're going to be running with Bane of the Stricken, which says each attack you make against an enemy increases the damage it takes from your attacks by X depending on the level. And then at level 25 it says gain 25% increased damage against bosses and Rift Guardians. And like I said, the way that I'm running this build, I'm running it almost full glass cannon with the Hammer of the Ancients damage here instead of Vitality and the Pain Enhancer here. But if you feel like you're dying too often, you could run with an Esoteric Alteration, saying gain X amount of non-physical damage reduction, and then at level 25, while below a certain amount of health, your resistances to everything are increased by 75%. And if you want to go absolutely full glass cannon, instead of our Aquila Cuirass that we're running in the cube, you could run with Mage Fist, which is going to give you 20% additional damage to your fire skill. But I find that I don't have quite enough toughness to survive at higher greater risk without running with the Aquila Cuirass. The rest of what we're running in the cube is going to be the Gavel of Judgment, which says the damage of Hammer of the Ancients is increased by 800% and it returns 25 Fury if it hits 3 or fewer enemies. You do want to keep an eye on your Fury. You can lose it very quickly with how fast you're attacking. You want to make sure that you're not hitting as many enemies as you could, and you want to try to let your area damage kind of spread and deal the damage for you. Next we're running, like I said, Aquila Cuirass, which says while above 90% primary resource, all damage taken is reduced by 50%. These work really, really well if you're hitting 3 or fewer enemies because it'll keep you at or near maximum fury, and that's going to allow you to take a lot more damage than you originally would be able to. And then lastly, we're running a Convention of Elements. Gain 200% increased damage against a single element. In this case, we're going to be using fire. So you can see down here, we're going to rotate, and when it's on our fire rotation, that's where we're going to be dealing the bulk of our damage. Alright, next let's look at our skills. We are going to be running with Ruthless, which says you gain 40% additional damage to enemies below 30% health. It's really, really good for finishing off the Rift Guardian and Elites and some trash that you're going to find throughout the Rift that may take more than a few hits to get rid of. Nextly, we're going to be taking Brawler, which says as long as there are 3 enemies, and there almost always will be, within 12 yards, all of your damage is increased by 20%. Next, we're going to be taking Berserker Rage, which says you deal 25% additional damage while near maximum fury, and that's going to work really well with your Gavel of Judgment and your Aquila Cuirass. Not only are you going to get the 50% damage reduction when you're hitting fewer enemies, but you're also going to get the 25% additional damage from this passive here. And then Nerves of Steel, because we are kind of squishy and we don't want to die constantly, so we're going to be running this to give us a free life in the event that we get in a little bit over our heads so we have time to escape. For the rest of our skills, we're going to be using Call of the Ancients with Together as One. We're using Together as One for the damage reduction entirely. You do want to pay attention to your Ancients though, because in the event of, you're surrounded by a bunch of beams or a bunch of poison or something to that effect, they're going to lose life, and if they die, you're going to be taking full damage. Not only are you going to be taking full damage, but with the rune that we get for free from our shoulders, which is the Ancient's Fury rune, you're going to gain 4 Fury every time your Ancients deal damage, and they are always going to be attacking something. As long as there's something around you to hit, they're going to be hitting it. This helps you maintain your Fury. Nextly, we're going to be taking Warcry with Impunity, Unleash Rallying Cry, which increases your armor for you and everyone around you within 100 yards for 20%, lasts 2 minutes, and then increase resistances to all elements by 20% while affected by this. And I'm pretty sure all barbarians use this skill, Wrath of the Berserker Insanity, which says you gain a bunch of stuff: critical hit chance, attack speed, dodge chance, and movement speed. And then with the rune we're taking, Insanity, you're going to gain 50% increased damage on top of all that as well. It's a staple for any barbarian build. Nextly, we're going to be taking Furious Charge so that we can keep our Band of Might stack up, so that we have a bunch of damage reduction on top of our Aquila Cuirass. And here you're going to want the Merciless Assault rune. Because everything in this build is self-sufficient except for Furious Charge, you're going to want to get as much cooldown on the skill as you can. Taking the Merciless Assault rune, every enemy that you hit is going to reduce the cooldown of it by 2 seconds, so if you hit 5 enemies, it's going to completely refund it. And in the event that you are up against the Rift Guardian, it's going to take approximately 8 seconds for the cooldown to come down, which is fine because your Band of Might lasts for exactly 8 seconds. So as long as you charge on the Rift Guardian every time that you can, this isn't going to fall off as long as you hit them with your charge. Nextly, we're going to be taking Battle Rage with Bloodshed, which says Inner Rage, which increases your damage by 10% and critical hit chance by 3%, lasts 2 minutes. And then with the Bloodshed rune, deal damage equal to 20% of your recent critical hits to enemies within 20 yards. It's really, really powerful. On top of our area damage, this is going to be the best way we have of spreading damage, since we're not really going to be allowed to hit multiple enemies at the same time. You know, if you go over 3, you're going to be wasting Fury, and then you're going to be taking a bunch more damage when Aquila drops off. So this is going to help you spread your damage out to kill more mobs. And then lastly, for our damaging skill, we're going to be using Hammer the Ancients with Smash. Call forth a massive hammer to strike directly in front of you for 640% weapon damage as fire. And then also the skill has an additional 1% chance to critically hit for every 5 point of Fury that you have. Just another reason for us to keep our Fury near max. It's going to give us an incredible amount of critical hit chance. And then I know a lot of you guys and a lot of my friends actually have told me, hey man, you know, a lot of people may not have the good gear that you got, you know, so how do they know that they're going to be able to do the things that you're doing with this build? And in order to kind of circumvent that, I have dumped a bunch of my Paragon points out. For my core, I'm only taking 100 points in Vitality. Like I said, my health pool is really low. And then I'm taking my movement speed. Outside of that, I don't have anything. For my offense, I'm not going to be taking any critical hit damage. I'm taking my crit chance, cooldown, and attack speed, because by the time you're 800 Paragon, you're going to have all of this already. So let's say maybe you don't have a maxed out Band of Might. You know, I'm completely circumventing my Band of Might because I'm not taking any of this here. For defense, I am going to be maxing out everything just because, I mean, the life is nice, the armor's good, resist all is nice, life regen is okay. I mean, it doesn't really play a massive part. But along with the offense and utility, you're going to have this maxed out by the time you're 800 Paragon, and you really won't be pushing a whole lot before then. So I'm maxing these out because most people would have them maxed out anyways. And then for our utility, I'm going to leave my area damage completely empty. My resource cost reduction, I'm going to do life per hit and gold find for the same reasons as stated before. So now if you look at my damage sheet, I'm running with a whole lot less critical hit damage. I still have the same crit chance. I have my 10% cooldown from the Paragon points, and then my area damage is sitting at 88%. So hopefully that's enough to refrain you guys from saying, well, I don't have your gear, so I can't do that. But if you look at my stats don't make it seem like I have this gear. A lot of my stuff has dropped. 2.25, 31, and 1. So hopefully that'll help you guys understand the power that this build really has. With me, you know, taking away a lot of my Paragon, I'm going to be a lot weaker, but we're still going to be able to clear this no problem. Alright folks, that's all I got for you today. Hopefully you guys had a great holiday. I know I did, and we'll see you guys in the next one.
Brave the rifts, and you will be well rewarded.
faded.
Nah, I done grew up around some people living their life in bottles. Granddaddy had the golden flask, back door every day in Chicago. Some people like the way it feels, some people want to